This is the North Mobile Post radio show, and I'm your host, David Merrill. Tonight's big story is, of course, Bill Clinton's speech at the Democratic National Convention. Bubba went for almost 50 minutes tonight in his speech, and this from a guy who once famously went too long in the 1988 convention. That was only a 32-minute speech, and he got cheers when in the end he said in closing or in conclusion. There were cheers because people were so happy it was over because he went so long. Well, he didn't go too long for the crowd tonight. They loved every minute of it and ate up everything he said. Clinton went on a point-for-point rebuttal to all of the attacks against President Obama. Now, coming into this speech, there was some talk from pundits that, the Democrats were worried. Obama's campaign was worried what was Clinton going to say, fearful that he might, go off the reservation. He did that earlier this year where he said he called Romney a sterling businessman and said that, he was one of several Democrats who said we don't want to attack private equity and all that. But there was none of that in this speech. This was a tour de force of defense of the Obama record. Like I said, he answered every attack the Republicans have laid on him from all sectors. He went over health care. He went over the economy. He went over the Medicare thing, the Medicare attacks, the welfare attacks. And more importantly, I think, was early on in his speech, he said no president, not him and none of his predecessors, could have solved the problem that was handed to Barack Obama in 3 years. I think that was a very important argument. Something a lot of, economists have been saying this whole time, but, somebody of Bill Clinton's stature, for him to come out and say that, I think was a big deal. That's, first of all, regardless of how many people saw the speech tonight, because there was probably less people watching tonight than last night, simply because tonight was the NFL opener, Cowboys and the Giants. So it probably didn't get as big an audience as last night. In fact, they already showed the Twitter stats. Bill Clinton's speech did not get as much Twitter activity as Michelle Obama's last night. She got 28,000 tweets per minute, and he only got about 22,000, which is still 8,000 more than Mitt Romney's speech. So it was a bit of, I think this TV ratings are going to come in and be less than last night. But the thing is, this speech is going to be chopped up and just replayed so many times that, this message is going to get out there. You're going to be seeing this the rest of the week. I think you'll see campaign commercials on parts of this speech because he just defended the Obama record in a way that no one else has been able to do. Clinton, the pundits like to say, he has the ability to take the policy wonk, the numbers, and personalize it and package it and deliver it to the voters. It's how he got elected twice. And it was all on display tonight. He defended against, one of the big, and this has, I think, been hurting the Obama team, the Romney-Ryan attack on the $700 billion in cuts to Medicare. They call them cuts. Obama, of course, calls them savings. Clinton pretty much, he explained it flat out. You see commentators on TV do it, and it's one thing, but this was to a national TV audience on the big three networks, the big two networks. NBC had the football game, but the other two, CBS and ABC, both had it, and all the cable channels. He explained, that the savings is what Obama calls it, is going to extend the life of Medicare. And he also, he really gave a good defense of Obamacare itself, and how it's going to close the donut hole for seniors. I think a lot of seniors saw this speech tonight. If maybe not young people who are watching the football game, but I think a lot of seniors did see it, and I think this could have some traction, especially in places like Florida. I think a lot of seniors in Florida probably seen this, and I think this Bill Clinton coming out could change some minds. The few undecided voters that might be out there, this is the one guy, I think, in the country, the one politician that can sway it. Bill Clinton is the most popular politician in this country right now. His approval rating is at like 69%. no one can touch that. The next closest is Michelle Obama. She's not even a politician. She's the first lady. But she's the next closest at like 65%. President Obama's at like 53%. Romney's down lower. His favorability is much lower. So this is the one guy I feel that can reach out and affect the opinions of undecideds or swing voters, whatever you want to call them. And I think he made a compelling argument tonight for the Obama brand. You know, he really tied himself to Obama. He said the policies are similar, they're the same. And it's funny because as I was sitting here talking to my dad earlier in the day, I said, I was saying, we saw the report that Obama was going to be in town tonight. I said, they need to get him on the stage with Bill Clinton. I said, you watch them do that. And the reason is because Clinton's speech did it, and what I've thought by doing that, what you're trying to do is almost trick people into thinking Obama is Clinton. You want the Clinton brand to rub off on Obama. You want people to associate one with the other, and no way of doing that better than having them both on the stage at the same time, especially right after a big speech from Bill Clinton. And they ended up doing that, and I called it earlier in the day. I was not surprised to see it, and I think it was a great idea. Great speech by Bill Clinton, the best speech of this campaign season thus far, probably going to be the best period. But like I said, point by point, he made all the right arguments. And from Fox News, I'm not sure can't remember who said it, they said he is an excellent lawyer for someone who is guilty. And by guilty, they mean that Obama's policies were bad, and Clinton just gave a good defense of it. He'd be a great defense lawyer. Of course, I disagree with that, and I agree with the points Bill Clinton made tonight. You know, I really like where he went after, because this has been something that has bothered me since it happened, and that is how the Republicans came out right after Obama was elected and pretty much decided they were not going to work with him. Supposedly they had some big meeting with the top Republicans in Congress, and they said they were going to work to stop his agenda as much as possible and keep him from getting reelected. And then famously, I believe it was in 2010, maybe after the midterms, or it might even have been earlier, Mitch McConnell famously said that his main objective was to make Obama a one-term president. That was his top priority, he said, was to make him a one-term president. And you can clearly see that in the way they've governed the Republicans in the Senate. They have set a record number of filibusters. Nearly every piece of legislation, whether it was, it could be something as simple as when they were I'm exaggerating here, but picking which day to clean the toilets, they would filibuster. I want to say that the number of filibusters was around 241 during this session of Congress. It is a record, and they have blown away all records for filibusters, and they have clearly made it their agenda to stop Barack Obama at any cost. I believe they've done it at the expense of the economy. I think their obstruction really hurt this country, because there's this myth that Obama wouldn't work with Republicans, and Bob Woodward even has a book coming out where he calls Obama arrogant because he said some comment to Eric Cantor or something like that. But I'm not going to say whether or not he's arrogant or not. I don't know Obama personally, but I will say this: it is just not true that he did not try to work across the aisle. Every big piece of legislation he did, he tried to bring Republicans to the table. Look at the stimulus package. It is filled with tax cuts. That is red meat for Republicans. He put all that in there, where Democrats were preferring, to do aid to the states to keep teachers and firemen and police hired, and infrastructure projects. That's the stuff Democrats want to do, and they wanted to go much bigger. But they scaled it down because Republicans don't like to spend money now all of a sudden. They loved it under Bush, but they don't now. So it was scaled down, and I can't remember the exact amount, but there were several $100 billion out of the total $700 billion stimulus that are tax cuts, and that is in there for Republicans. So he went there, did that, and I can't remember the exact number, but not a lot of Republicans voted for the stimulus after he added all this stuff in there for them. Okay, then you get to health care. Some conservative pundits will say he wouldn't work with Republicans on health care. That is just complete fabrication. Obamacare is a conservative Republican plan. It's based on a plan that was thought up by the Heritage Foundation, which is, of course, a right-wing think tank. In the early 1990s, it was thought up as a alternative to Hillary Care. And so, okay, they do it, and then not only that, who's the first place to implement this plan in the country? It's Mitt Romney, a Republican in Massachusetts. Obamacare is a Republican plan. This is something he got hammered by Democrats because it was just horrible negotiating posture. You're supposed to start, you start negotiating with what you want, or even more than what you want. He should have started negotiating at the single payer plan. That's the Democrat plan. That's the liberal plan. You start there, and then you can work your way towards the middle on something like Obamacare, but he didn't. Single payer wasn't even at the table. It wasn't even an option. Our best thing was Obamacare with a public option. He started with that. That was where he started. Okay, so you're negotiating with a Republican plan. And to claim he wouldn't give nothing to Republicans is absurd. The whole plan is Republican. And no Republicans would vote for the plan. Not one for this plan that is a conservative plan. This is the conservative alternative to the liberal idea, which is single payer, like they have in Canada or England or most other modern countries. So yeah, the absolute myth that he didn't want to work with Republicans. He wanted to do from the start what Bill Clinton did after he got shellacked in the '94 midterms, which triangulation. Barack Obama would come in as a centrist. Another myth that he's the most left-wing president ever is just baloney. Like I said, look at that. He did that. Look at his foreign policy. I mean, his foreign policy has basically been a more efficient version of George W. Bush's. A more effective version as well, with his, less focus on boots on the ground and more focus on drone bombings, intelligence, and look at the result of his policy. He got Osama bin Laden. He's killed more terrorists. And so this idea that he's the biggest liberal that's ever lived is just, like I said, a complete fallacy. And back to the point, Clinton pointed this out. He pointed out the Mitch McConnell quote. He pointed out how Republicans would not work with him, that they made a conscious decision early in his administration to not work with the president. It needed to be called out. I think that case needed to be made to the American people. Obama has not done a good job of doing that. Clinton did it tonight, and I think we'll see some movement in the polls off of this, especially in swing states. Especially, I'm looking at Florida for Bill Clinton to have made the biggest case, maybe. We'll have to see if there was some blowback from that nonsense about Jerusalem as the capital of Israel not being mentioned in the platform, and God not being mentioned, which they changed apparently at Obama's demand. So we'll have to see if that got any traction. But yeah, great speech from Clinton tonight. Other speakers included, the other big speaker was Elizabeth Warren. Gave a good speech. Big fan of Elizabeth Warren. She's been fighting against Wall Street. She oversaw TARP for Obama, set up the Consumer Protection Bureau, Financial Protection Bureau. Should have been the director of that agency, but the Republicans would not accept her, so Obama put somebody else in. She's now running for Senate in Massachusetts, and she's losing by like 5 points, I believe, to Scott Brown, who's a very moderate Republican. If she loses to him, having him in the Senate, it's not, he's a moderate guy. He's a decent senator. I have no complaints about him. I'd prefer Elizabeth Warren because we need somebody in the Senate who will fight Wall Street and the special interests. But I'm not sure it's going to happen. We'll have to see what kind of bounce she gets out of this national appearance. Also speaking was contraceptive activist Sandra Fluke, whatever her name is. I thought she gave a pretty good speech for somebody who's basically just an activist, not a big political, not a candidate, not a politician per se. She's more of an activist. Gave a decent speech, I think. Once again, continuing the theme of the convention, of both conventions really, about women, appealing to women. But overall, Clinton just owned the night. Big night for the Democrats, I think. I think this more than any speech that's been given in throughout the entire two conventions, this is the one I think that will have the biggest political consequences. Tomorrow night we have, of course, President Obama accepting the nomination. Joe Biden will also be speaking. I'll have commentary and analysis after that, and that's going to wrap it up for this show. We'll see you then.